So as part of this segment of the video, what we'll be doing is we'll be going through the concepts of pushing information from a primary form into a secondary form and back again. In the previous video, we had a one-way transfer from the main form into the child form, and now we're going to work to transfer back from the child form information, specifically which button was clicked, from the main form back to the, from the child form back to the main form. So at this point, what we're doing is we have a variable to capture and verify our full name from our main form. We actually capture and then do the verification in this step. We then create an instance of our FRM child as child form, and we pass that full name to the FRM child constructor. Since we're passing the value here, there's no need to pass the value, but we could pass the value here using this property, this public property called full name. And then we call in our step open the child form, which is the instance of FRMChild.show. The show method displays the control, shows the form to the user, and then at this point we then have the form being displayed, and the question is, how do we get the button click from here back to the main form, essentially providing feedback to the main form as to which button was clicked. Alright, so from the child form we have a few options. We can go to the button, we can look for the dialog result property, and we can set that property to its correlating dialog result. The OK button is OK. The cancel button will be cancel. Simple as that. Now if we go back to FRM main and we go back to the submit button event handler, you will notice that when we call show does not have a return type. It's void. There is another method that's called showDialog, and showDialog in fact does provide the dialog result. So if we changed our method from show to showDialog, we'll say var dialog result to capture that result, and then we can do a simple switch case on the dialog result and a message box dot show, and we'll just put a message that says you clicked OK and a break, and then we can also do one for cancel. You clicked cancel and a break. So if we run it this time, we put our full name, we get the dialog box back. Now you'll notice that now this is a show dialog. If we try to click on main form, we get a block. We have to close this form before we can return focus to the main form. So for the first round, I'll click OK, and it says you clicked OK. Hit submit again, click cancel. It says you clicked cancel. Now one thing to take note here is that we didn't actually write any code on the child form or FRM child to make that work. If I double click on the OK button, you'll notice that it gives me a blank or an empty event handler, and the same thing with the cancel. That actually is being handled due to the wiring relationship that exists as part of the .NET framework between those buttons, the dialog result property, and there actually is a dialog result property also on the form itself. Which is not presented in the properties dialog box. So we'll get to that in a moment. So let's say, for example, we actually needed something to happen on these events. We didn't just want it to automatically push out that dialog result. Maybe there's some logic that needs to take place to make sure that something is being addressed. For example, we have a label on here, but let's say we expand our form a little bit, and we also add to it a checkbox. And maybe the box is something pretty arbitrary, but it's some sort of an I agree type checkbox. So if they go to click OK, they first have to agree before we can do OK. So inside of the OK event handler, we can simply check our agree box, and we'll call it CHK I agree. So we'll say if CHK I agree dot checked is not checked, then message box dot show you must agree before you can continue with a break. Or I'm sorry, with a return. So if they do not check the box, they'll receive a message and then it will exit out of this event. Simple enough. If they do agree, then we can actually set the page, or I'm sorry, the form, which is referred to as this dialog result, equal to dialog result OK. So this will set that the forms dialog result to OK, which will then be sent back through the show dialog method on the main form. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll run. Full name. I'll click OK. I get a message box saying you must agree before you can continue. I'll click OK to that. And it still says you clicked OK. Interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and put a breakpoint here on the return to see if it actually makes it to the return or if something unexpected is happening. I'll hit submit again. I'll click OK. You must agree before you can continue. OK. I am hitting the return, so that is to be expected. I'll go ahead and continue. And I'm actually still making it back to this point in the code. Now what we really want to happen is we want to stop here and loop back to that child dialog box or child form before we get to here. So what's happening that's causing that not to take place? This is something to keep in mind. What's occurring is that this button is in fact wired to have a dialog result pushed to the form. So what that means is right now we have it set to OK. The moment this button is clicked, that button calls to its parent form and sets the dialog result of the parent form to OK. Then the click event is called, and then our code executes. What we want to have happen is we don't want the dialog result of the form set until after our logic has executed. So to make sure that happens, we're actually going to set the button's dialog result to none. And then we'll leave this line here to set it to OK when everything is successful. So we'll refresh, put in full name. This will then show the dialog box. If we hit OK, you must agree before you can continue. I hit OK. I get to the return point, which should then kick me out of this event, and I'm brought back to the child form. Again, it's a dialog, so I can't leave it without closing, canceling, or getting through the OK button. Click OK again. I still get the warning. I'll check the box and hit OK. And this should get us to this breakpoint where it actually sets the dialog result to OK. I click OK. This is not a true statement, so it skips over it and moves down to this line, which sets the form's dialog result to OK. I hit play, and I'm now back to the main form. It understands that I clicked OK, and everything moves forward. So that's a very subtle thing to keep in mind that you want to, if you have complex logic that you want to make sure is correct before you move forward, you want to make sure that you actually are not setting the dialog result on the button, but that you're doing it in the event handler. The cancel button, we don't care if agree is clicked or not, so we'll just leave the dialog result there. I can click cancel and it will just kick me back out. With the OK button, on the other hand, I want to make sure that the agree box is checked before I can hit OK. Alright, so in short, the concepts that we covered here was the idea of passing information from our main form to our child form, being able to capture that information at the child form level, and in this case we do it via the constructor and a property, and then using the dialog result to pass basic dialog result information from the child form back to the main form. In the next tutorial, I will show you how to pass complex information from the child form back to the main form so that you have a full circle loop of communication between your forms.